My name is Carol. Looking back now, I can still picture the look on his face at the family reunion. It was a mix of shock, betrayal, and pure rage. I'll never forget the moment he spotted me walking in hand with Ethan. A few months ago, my life seemed put together. I had a cozy one-bedroom apartment that was technically Jake's, but I'd made it a real home. I had a small hatchback that, while not flashy, always started. I was the practical one, the friend people called when they needed help with their finances. I'd built my life methodically, making practical decisions one by one. Jake, on the other hand, was in sales. He was 35, charming, and could talk anyone into anything. We'd been together for 3 years and engaged for 9 months. On paper, we were a good match. He was the life of the party, and I was the stability he needed. At first, his jokes about my clothes and my taste in restaurants were just that, jokes. But as time went on, they started to sting. One night, Jake was having a guys' night at our apartment. I was supposed to be at a book club, but it got cancelled due to half the group getting sick. I texted Jake to let him know I'd just grab takeout and stay in the bedroom. His response was just a thumbs up emoji, which hurt more than it should have. When I got home around 9 o'clock, I could hear the laughter coming from the open living room window. For a second, I was happy he was having a good time. I let myself in quietly, carrying a bag of Chinese food. The place smelled like beer and the cologne his friend Derek always wore. As I walked down the hallway, I heard my name. Honestly, sometimes I think Carol should just date my cousin Ethan instead. He actually has standards, one of them said. Those words hit me like a punch in the gut. Jake's voice rose above the others. I'm serious. Ethan would have her out of those old sneakers on day 1 and take her to real restaurants. They all laughed. I stood there, frozen, my fingers gripping the takeout bag so tightly it started to tear. They were talking about me like I was some project to be fixed. Jake went on, she's like a reliable space heater. Warm and practical, but invisible. I looked down at my comfortable sneakers, the ones he'd once called cute. I don't know how long I stood there. All I knew was that I had to get out. I slipped out of the apartment and sat in my car, replaying the conversation in my head. The jokes he'd made over the months, the way he'd rolled his eyes at my suggestions, it all made sense now. I thought about Ethan, Jake's cousin. He was 32, a software engineer. He was always kind, always listened when I talked. At family dinners, while Jake was off socializing, I'd end up having long conversations with Ethan. He'd ask about my job and remember the details. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Ethan's name. We'd exchanged numbers for a family event. I hesitated for a long time, but then I typed, "Hey, it's Carol. Are you awake? I really need to talk." I hit send and immediately wanted to take it back. A few seconds later, his response came. "Yeah, I'm awake. You okay? Want me to call?" I sent back a simple please. When he called, I tried to speak, but all that came out was a sob. "Hey, it's okay. Take your time. I've got you," he said. Those words were like a lifeline. I told him everything I'd heard. He was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm so sorry, Carol. That's beyond a joke. I've called Jake out on his behavior before. At Thanksgiving, when he made that comment about you being lucky he took you to a fancy place, I pulled him aside and told him it wasn't right." I was shocked. "You did?" I asked. "He said I was being dramatic and that you didn't mind," Ethan replied. I thought about all the times I'd laughed along with Jake's jokes to avoid making a scene. "I minded," I said quietly. Ethan helped me see that Jake's behavior wasn't just harmless teasing. It was a pattern of disrespect. I knew I had to make a decision. "What do I do?" I asked. If my partner talked about me like that, I'd walk away. "Once someone starts seeing you as a joke, it's hard for them to change," he said. That night, I went back into the apartment. Jake was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. When he saw me, he asked if I was okay. I set the takeout on the counter, took off my engagement ring, and placed it next to the soy sauce packets. He was shocked. "What are you doing?" he asked. I told him I'd heard everything he and his friends had said. He tried to brush it off as a joke, but I wouldn't let him. "It's not a joke. It's a confession of how you really feel about me," I said. He got angry, accusing me of running to Ethan. I told him I'd called someone who treated me like a human being. He snapped that I was being dramatic, but I was done. I picked up my keys and walked out, leaving the ring and the wedding plans behind. That night, I stayed at my friend Lily's place. The next morning, Lily could tell something was wrong. I told her everything, and she was furious. "If I'd been there, I would have ended it for you," she said. Over the next few weeks, I started to pick up the pieces. I canceled the wedding vendors, one by one, apologizing and dealing with the non-refundable deposits. Jake's messages went from constant pleas for me to come back to occasional rants about how I'd ruined everything. Ethan and I started to spend more time together. At first, I was worried people would think it was a rebound, but when I was with him, it felt right. We'd go for coffee, take walks in the park, and just talk. About a month after I moved out, Ethan mentioned that there was a family reunion coming up. He said his mom had asked if he was bringing anyone. He told me he'd been thinking about walking in with me, not to spite Jake, but because he wanted me there. I was nervous. I knew Jake would be there, and I was worried about what his family would think. Ethan reassured me. "I know it looks messy, but we didn't do anything wrong. We just fell for each other at the wrong time," he said. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to avoid the drama, but another part of me was tired of hiding. "Okay, let's go," I said. The morning of the reunion, I stood in front of the mirror, trying to decide what to wear. Lily was there, encouraging me. "You look amazing. You're a strong woman who left a toxic relationship," she said. When I met Ethan downstairs, he was leaning against his car. He looked at me and said, "You look like yourself, and that's perfect." His words made me feel better. The drive to the reunion was filled with nervousness. I asked Ethan if he thought his family would hate me. He said some might be confused, but the people who mattered knew the truth. When we arrived at the pavilion, it was filled with people. As we walked in hand, the chatter stopped. People stared. I saw Jake talking to his mom. When she spotted us, she froze and said his name. Jake turned, and his face went through a series of emotions: confusion, recognition, betrayal, and then fury. He stalked towards us. "Are you kidding me? You brought her here?" he hissed. Ethan stepped in front of me slightly. "Yes, she's my date. We didn't start dating until after you and Carol broke up," he said calmly. Jake was livid. "This is sick. You're dating my ex-fiancé?" I stepped forward. "Nothing happened while we were together. You pushed me away with your constant teasing and disrespect," I said. Jake scoffed, but I wasn't going to back down. I told him how it felt to hear him mock my clothes, my taste, and my life. A few of his cousins looked uncomfortable. His mom tried to intervene, but Jake wouldn't listen. Ethan stood by my side, calm and steady. He said, "I care about Carol, and I'm not ashamed to be with her." Jake let out a bitter laugh. "You two deserve each other," he said. Ethan replied, "That's the idea." A ripple went through the crowd. Some people nodded in agreement. After that, Jake walked away, and normal conversations slowly resumed. Ethan asked me if I was okay. I felt a sense of relief. "I think I am," I said. In the weeks that followed, there were still some aftershocks. Jake's friends left passive-aggressive comments on my social media, and there were whispers in the family group chats. Ethan's mom was torn, asking him to give Jake some space. But Ethan and I were strong. We decided to move in together. It was a small 2-bedroom apartment with old carpet and crooked blinds, but it was our place. We filled it with our memories, our inside jokes, and our love. One day, Jake showed up at our door. He looked a mess, his eyes red-rimmed. He said he'd been going to therapy and realized he'd been cruel to me. He said seeing me with Ethan was killing him. I told him that Ethan didn't steal me from him. He'd pushed me away with his actions. Ethan stood beside me, silent but supportive. Jake begged me to believe he could change, but I knew that the damage had been done. 6 months after the reunion, my life had changed. I stopped being afraid of my phone buzzing, stopped flinching at the word engagement. Ethan and I had built a life together, a real one. One evening, as we were having dinner at our old, wobbly table, Ethan took my hand and said, "I really love us. We don't pretend, and that's what I love most." I felt a tear in my eye. He went on to say that his standards were kindness, respect, and someone who truly cared about the relationship. I realized that I'd finally found someone who loved me for who I was, without trying to change me. And although I sometimes think about Jake, it's more like looking at an old bruise. I hope he finds his own happiness, but he's no longer part of my story. Now, I'm looking forward to a future with Ethan, a future filled with love and acceptance.